Hello, everyone, and welcome to Café New Canadians. Café New Canadians is brought to you by New Canadians TV Network. We're an immigrant focused TV network and information hub that helps newcomers understand more about Canada, navigate life and work here. And through Café New Canadians, we always discuss issues that matter to newcomers to Canada. Now, this session of Café New Canadians is going to be about how internationally educated nurses can thrive in Canada. And we will be hearing the insights and experiences of a program representative, as well as some participants who've been part of just the program that I'm about to talk about next. Because this session of Cafe New Canadians is brought to you in collaboration with PASS, which is Pre-Arrival Supports and Services Program for Internationally Educated Nurses. You will be hearing more about this program and also from the panelists about their experiences of being part of the program and how they've been able to bridge the gap that they had when they moved to Canada and wanted to reconnect with their profession of nursing here. My name is Shruti Dargan. I will be moderating this chat. And as I mentioned earlier today, of course, the goal is to discuss how internationally educated nurses can thrive in Canada. At this point, I'd love to welcome the panelists to join me. And before that, quickly, just to also remind you, this is a conversational chat. You also have the option of asking your questions, and the panelists present will be addressing your concerns and any queries you have. So without further ado, let me just welcome the panelists that will be joining us today. As you see on your screens, we have with us Meghan Wankel. She is the program representative for PASS. And we also have with us Richard Asare, Osama and Vandana Nurkoo, who are all program participants of PASS. So very warm welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Great to be here.
Thank you.
Let's get started with a round of introductions, just so our audience knows you better and can then come up with questions for you as well. I'd love to start with Meghan. It would be a great opportunity for you to also introduce PASS and just tell us a little bit about, what is expected from the program, and then we'll dive into more experiences of the panelists.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody, first of all. Big thank you to New Canadians for arranging this, and I am so grateful to our panelists who are joining me today to talk about PASS. And thank you to everybody listening in from overseas. And I am so happy in the chat to see there is quite a number of PASS participants listening in. So I'm just so grateful you could all be here with us today. So as some folks listening in may know, not everybody listening in may be part of PASS. We are one of 16 pan-Canadian free pre-arrival programs that are funded by Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada. PASS is the only program for nurses, which we're very proud of. And we have different supports involved in the program. Really, the focus is on helping internationally educated nurses become familiar with and start the credentialing process. It is complex, to say the least, as I'm sure we'll hear from the panelists and folks listening in today. We offer individual case management. We want people to prepare for their big moves and their arrival in their new homes, a series of live monthly webinars, all designed really towards workforce integration, imparting familiarity with the Canadian health sector, learning the nursing roles and scopes of practice across the country, the cultural and linguistic norms of our health sector. We do try to do a lot of work as well around nursing-specific language and communication courses, access to different mentors, and diverse guest professional development sessions. So really grateful for the opportunity to talk about the program. And it is free of charge with the immigration approval for Canada as a permanent resident or convention refugee. And really excited to hear people's experiences today with the program.
Thank you. Thanks, Meghan, for that introduction. We'll, of course, be diving in deeper to learn more about the program, but not before we hear from the alumni. Richard, would you like to go next and just share a little bit with us about, when you moved to Canada, how that journey has been for you so far? Tell us about your previous experience.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm a mental health nurse from Ghana, completed my nursing diploma in 2002, that is 2002. And then I was able to, further up and then did a a degree in mental health nursing in Ghana, and then moved to the classroom to teach mental health. You know, Ghana, we lack mental health teachers. So I happen to be one of the top, tutors over there. Fortunately for me, I was able to join the PASS program and then later inducted as a member of the International Educated Nurses. That is this year. And then that's late June 2024, that is 28th of June, I moved to Canada. And currently, I am on the verge of registering for my NNAS and then register with CNO and then perhaps a RNA. So that has been my journey so far. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing that. Osama, would you like to go next, please?
Good evening, good morning, wherever you are located in the world. Thank you for joining this webinar. My name is Osama Edik. I am from Lebanon. I am a registered nurse in Lebanon, an internationally educated nurse. I have 21 years of experience in nursing. I have a bachelor's degree in 2003 and a master's degree in 2015. I worked in Lebanon as well as in Saudi Arabia for 14 years. I came to Canada in July 2024, 31st of July. I landed here, so I've not been here for that long. I'm currently also working on my RN registration with the CNO. I completed my NNAS requirement and currently doing the bridging program for the educational gap. Thank you.
That's wonderful to hear. Thank you. Vandana, last but not least, please, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself as well.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. I'm Vandana Nurkoo. I'm from Mauritius, and I have 10 years of experience. I started in 2012 with my 3-year training. Then I got my certificate. I got my bachelor in 2022. I have worked in different fields, medical, surgical. I had the opportunity to work in mental. So I came in Canada this year. And this year itself, I came to know about PASS and I registered myself. This is where I met Meghan. I already have my registration with CNO. I did all by myself from my country itself. I'm just applying for RN positions, and I have Meghan who has always helped me. Whenever I email her, I always get a reply. And recently, we just did some mock interview question, which helped me for my incoming interviews. So I'm just waiting for replies of my interviews and other job offers, anything. But the post, what they did for us, every webinars, every topic that they covered has really helped and make us more knowledgeable of how the Canadian nursing function, the laws and how nurses are protected, we IENs, how we can become part of the Canadian nursing in Canada. So I thank the board members, I thank Meghan also, Nicola, who has tailored my resume, and everybody.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. Firstly, all the very best with your interviews. We can only hope that you will be hearing good news soon from the employers. And, you know, as you mentioned as well, you know, that's the essential part of any bridging program. So largely and as Meghan explained earlier as well, these programs are meant for individuals who have previous experience in that profession and are just looking for just those final steps to reconnect with that profession here in Canada, to make connections, to find some familiarity, to understand how things work in Canada. And of course, there's a lot of support. As Vandana, you mentioned, you know, Meghan was there to support you. There is support during the program. There's support also with the job search and employment component as well. So let's dive into that a little bit more. Meghan, if you could just very briefly take us through, you know, what are some key steps? So for people joining us, and I can see, of course, from all over the world as well, who are joining us, thank you for that. What are some steps that you can explain for someone with a nursing background when they arrive in Canada? What is it that they can expect, you know, in terms of timelines, in terms of, say, licensing or certifications required? If you could just shed light on that, please.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll try to explain this as clearly as I can, because as folks listening and going through the process know, it's not really straightforward or the same. for every candidate, but internationally educated nurses wanting to practice in Canada do have to first open an assessment file and get all of the required documentation submitted. Now, it's been evolving so quickly. Assessment processes are already changing, and it's been quite staggering in the last couple of years. But the starting point and how nurses progress through the assessment, like I mentioned, will look different for each IEN, depending on where they are seeking licensure in Canada. Canada does not yet have a pan-Canadian harmonized nursing assessment process, so it is done provincially and territorially. So the starting point for some applicants, and I think this was the case with a lot of my colleagues on the panel, is through the National Nursing Assessment Service. So many provinces are still using the NNAS, which offers both expedited pathways and regular pathways, depending on the province and the provincial regulator. Other provinces, you start by opening a file with Inspire Global Assessments, or maybe you're applying directly to the regulator. Some provinces do have some faster pathways for nurses if they're licensed in certain countries, like India, Nigeria, Philippines, the US, for example. And it's only after internationally educated nurses go through their respective assessment process, get their documents assessed by the regulator, then they receive the guidance letter outlining the next steps they need to take to meet their licensure requirements. And I won't go into too much granular detail, but there are 8 regulatory requirements that nurses do have to meet to gain licensure in every province. The order in which the requirements might be met, maybe some of them are waived. It can be quite quick for some people, maybe under 6 months to a year. It could take a couple years for other candidates. But that does depend on the individual assessment results. So the first requirement is the education equivalency. Internationally educated nurses may or may not have to take bridging to fill that requirement. If the regulator has identified any competency gaps, applicants could be offered the opportunity to challenge a clinical assessment, or they'll just go ahead and take the bridging that's required to meet that requirement. There is, of course, the licensure exam, that's the NCLEX for registered nurse candidates. The practical nursing exam is the REX-PN or the CPNRE, depending on the province. There is a 5-year safe practice window across the country. You need to show the regulator you've worked or studied in a nursing role within the last 5 years. That's across the country except Ontario, which only has a 3-year window. There's an online jurisprudence exam testing applicants' knowledge of laws and policies governing nursing, criminal record check. There's a language requirement that may or may not be waived. It's going to depend. You deal with that once your file's passed to the regulator. CELBAN and IELTS are the 2 language exams. You have to be authorized to work in Canada. You need to do a police criminal record check, and you have to make a health and conduct declaration. So the regulator knows that you'll be practicing in integrity and with accordance with the law. So those are kind of the 8 requirements you need to meet, but it can be a shorter process for some people if some of that can be waived.
But that definitely sets the tone for those who are planning to move to Canada and looking to find options within nursing. I'm sure that there are some people joining us today who have already moved to Canada or and are now in the process of the licensure exam or maybe looking for work experience. So let's also hear from Osama, Richard, and Vandana about what their respective experience was. Osama, I'll start with you. Of the 8 larger steps that Meghan mentioned, where were you when you moved to Canada? And what was that initial experience for you like when it came to finding options within nursing, or some differences that you were able to spot between nursing, as you said, back in Lebanon, or what you saw in Canada?
Yeah. So a very important stuff for anybody who is an internationally educated nurse and wants to come to Canada. Once you start planning for this, start your NNAS application as soon as possible. I cannot emphasize on that because it takes time for you to get the required documents and for the assessment to happen. So as soon as possible, start your NNAS application and get your documents into going on. A second thing, once you arrive here, I know that what the 8 steps or the 8 recommendations are cumbersome, but really, you have to keep your focus and you have to keep your spirits up. It can be exhausting at some points, but then you have to be motivated and keep pushing for that. I'm gonna tell you my experience. So after the CNO reviewed my file and the NNIS completed my file, I had the educational gap to fill. So I did jurisprudence exam. I did that. I did the criminal record also. And once this was identified, I qualify for something with the CNO called temporary RN license or temporary license. So, and for that, I just need to apply for a hospital, get accepted as a registered nurse, and work as a registered nurse under temporary status. So, and I went into this, but before that, I applied for a PSW, which is one of the posts that the PASS program will introduce you to. That what are the things that you can do before getting your RN license. And fortunately, I was able to get my temporary license at that time, so I did not continue. And so again, keep motivated. You can work in your registration, you can work in your RL license. It does take a little bit of time, but then keep that focus. And something else that I noticed, that somebody with a lot of experience might say that I've already studied nursing, I have a bachelor's degree, I have a master's degree, maybe I have a PhD, okay, but you did not study in Canada. And from my courses that I'm currently taking, I'm taking 2 courses at Algonquin College. I noticed some of the differences that with the focus on the Canadian environment and the Canadian healthcare system. So this is critical. I did not know that, and yeah, something can be done about it, but yeah, keep the focus.
That's a great point, of course, and I think I'm sure that this is going to repeat itself in the session, because with any profession, with any kind of licensing, the registration required, and so on, there's always points wherein that confidence dips, or there are points wherein you face obstacles. What defines your journey is not the obstacles, but how you overcome those obstacles. So, Richard, I saw you nodding when Osama was speaking. Tell us a little bit about your journey. Was it similar? Was it very different when you had just moved here?
My journey so far has been that when I entered or when I came to Canada, I was fortunate to have an assessment by the Care Center or IENs. Fortunately enough, I was also directed to achieve, which I would do to language, assessment, which I did well. Now I have registered in AS and then waiting for me to pay them and then continue with the CNO. And then the care center also did well, giving me a case manager, which I enrolled in Seneca Polytechnic, which currently I'm doing this course on OLT. That is so far how far I've been as far as my here is concerned. Thank you.
And Vandana, what about you? Tell me about, some initial thoughts you had. What was your first experience like when you moved to Canada? And when, as Osama mentioned, there could be some differences between, the healthcare system or nursing and requirements and what is expected. Were there some similarities or differences with the Canadian healthcare system or nursing that you wanted to highlight, maybe?
So I started my process in my country itself. I started in 2022. I got all the document that was needed for the NNAS, but it's a very long time, a very long process. I hope they have updated and keep it short for nowadays. But it was a very long time for me. Emailing, which was very unfortunate for me. Had to email each and every time. But at the end, I did get my advisory report, and I registered with CNO. I just had to meet the requirements. The only thing that for the requirement was my authorization for work, which was needed, and I got my permanent residency this year itself in July, and then I sent them my documents. Then I got my registration. I did not have to do any gap. I was accepted and got the RN title. from when I started to apply for jobs. So I did not have to do any education or to fill any gaps. I had the opportunity to do my NCLEX once I registered with CNO. Definitely it was a very long process from 2022 till 2024, but it was worth it. It does take time, but it's worth it.
Yeah, I'm sure everyone agrees with this. Megan, coming to you very quickly, something that Osama had mentioned, and thank you. I see that you're also dropping answers to some questions that we see here. I'd also like to remind that, of course, we will be directing some of those questions to you and the other panelists for everyone to hear the answers of as well from time to time. What I wanted to ask you was, Osama mentioned that before one actually becomes ready to be start working as a registered nurse, what are some roles that one can apply for? Is there some work that can be shown as work experience along with this education component or bridging component that you can highlight for the participants, maybe probably in that journey right now?
Yeah, that's a really great question, especially since, as you can tell, the licensure journeys and the individual timeframes can definitely vary.
Yes.
And many do have to work in temporary, non-regulated roles, albeit people aren't working to their full scope of practice. And all of the panelists were very modest in their introductions. Like, I wish all three resumes are just unbelievably impressive. So I know it can be frustrating to work in a smaller scope of practice temporarily. But people are still able to contribute their knowledge and skills, preferably in a healthcare role. Nurses in particular have so many transferable skills that can be applied to so many different professional contexts. I could go on and take up the rest of the hour, from the health teaching, the patient care delivery, even though, not doing it in a clinical setting, there's roles like Osama mentioned as personal support worker, where you can still have some aspects of that, from the administrative skills, problem solving, program management, research. So some of the common jobs internationally educated nurses do while meeting their requirements, and Osama mentioned one of them is personal support worker, or critical care aid, healthcare aid, they're called different terms across the province. Some of these positions will require licensure, a certification. So we discourage people from wasting time and money on any type of additional certification, but there are many such jobs that do not require that, especially in Ontario, where that requirement is often waived if employers know their IENs going through the assessment. There's medical office assistant, healthcare administration, working in the nonprofit sector. We've had a number of nurses coming through PASS, working for a social service agency, sometimes even doing health teaching. So yeah, lots to consider. We do webinars in PASS actually once a month on transferable skills, and people are often surprised, like the breadth, because people are, they'll often say, but I'm a nurse, I'm not sure what else I do. And really, nurses can literally do anything with that wide set of skills. So we do a lot of work pre and post-arrival in our post-arrival Ontario-based STARS program as well, to help nurses gain licensure, gain employment pre and post licensure. And that includes hosting a lot of Meet the Employer sessions. But yeah, lots of roles people can do while actively meeting their requirements for regulation.
That's wonderful. Another question I had for you, and I'd probably ask that right away, is, you mentioned some transferable skills. Besides that, what would be some top skills that you feel internationally educated nurses must have and showcase to employers to increase their chances of being hired more quickly, to reduce the timelines, at least once the interview process has started? So if you could highlight maybe your top 3 or top 5, and I'd love to learn from Osama, Vandana, and Richard about, was there a particular skill from that that was harder for you to build, or any roadblocks there? So Megan, you first, please.
Yeah, I'm super excited to hear what the other panelists think, but there are a few things that I always recommend focusing on, because internationally educated nurses come to Canada with the incredible clinical skills and knowledge that can be put to use. So a lot of what I recommend focusing on, again, is familiarity with, the nursing standards of practice, the cultural norms, the cross-cultural communication skills required for patient-centered care in Canada and working with a diverse patient population, knowing the evolving landscape of healthcare across Canada. The scopes of practice, even since I started working at Care Centre 10 years ago, have widened immensely. So people being very familiar with the scope of practice and the norms of the sector they'll be working in. I always, I drill back again on the communication skills, not the academic proficiency, but knowing the nursing specific communication, common clinical scenarios, that the strong oral and communication skills and the relationship building skills are really important to focus on. So I always highlight that. And even before, but especially after gaining RN or practical nursing licensure. And I know it's the same in many countries around the world, but ongoing professional development is always a big thing for nurses in Canada. And it's lifelong learning and opening new opportunities. A lot of folks in PASS have actually said the reason they come to Canada is because of, the diverse settings they can work in and the opportunities for career growth. So I always tell people, keep an open mind, let employers know how adaptable and flexible you are, and continue that professional development. And there's a lot of great specialty credential certifications through the Canadian Nurses Association as one example, what people can do to keep honing their skills.
Great. Continuing, the conversation around skills, Vandana, I'd like to know from you. Meghan mentioned that, a lot of people move because they get to work in a more diverse setting in Canada, but that could also be a challenge, especially if, say, someone moves from a completely contrasting culture. Things in terms of communication styles as well, people's acceptance towards different cultural differences, or how to navigate a similar situation in two different countries. Any experience that you'd like to share from your journey so far, Vandana, about how difficult or easy was it for you to settle in a diverse cultural environment?
Firstly, I would say I'm bilingual, so I speak both English and French. So when I came in Canada, I started in Quebec. So, skills about really building a trust and approach with a patient is easy because it's something I've been doing for so long. So I didn't have that much of difficulty. It was just my journey for registration that was much more difficult. But for skills, I do have it. It's just that you just have to put it in practice in different situations.
Yes.
So coming to Canada, I didn't have any difficulty with approaching with communication so far.
But you mentioned that you're bilingual, and that's an asset on anyone's resume, especially in Canada. If you know English and French both, it opens up a lot more opportunities for you. Vandana, would you want to highlight the importance beyond what I just said of why one should also focus on bridging that language?
Knowing both language, in Quebec I can work if I should be registered with the registration body, but I've been doing personal support worker work. So speaking French, so it's very easy for me to integrate anywhere where I want. And English part anywhere elsewhere in Quebec, in Ontario, or any province, it's easy for me. So I have the advantage in both.
Yeah, and that's a learning for others joining this session. When it takes time for processes to work, that's the time that you can utilize and probably, work on one's English or French to increase opportunities for later.
Yeah.
Richard, coming to you next, I wanted to also bring in the part about networking.
So,
like any profession, networking is key when it comes to, building that connections around you, so that the right people can vouch for you when the time is right as well. Talk a little about that with us, please.
Yeah. in my instance, for instance, in my instance, what happened was that I was able to get, acquainted with Meghan, and then fortunately enough, I have the ability to write, and then I've also published some material. So I did some writings and published some 2 books, and then gave it out to the Care Center for IENs, and then that led to me being inducted as a member of the IENs. More so because I've been teaching for close to 25, almost 30 years in my life, from being, a teacher in the classroom, then moving to the health sector, and then also teaching. Yes, I have the skills of imparting knowledge, and my intention of being here is to also go into being an instructor. And then, but before you be able to do that, you have to go through the mill and then be certified before you'll be able to, for which I'm earnestly working on it to be able to find my path. And then I have the skill of also doing research, because I have about 9 or so publications, among other presentations that I have on the web. So when it comes to administrative procedures or processes, when it comes to medical office assistant and all those things, in my case, for example, I deem it that I don't have any challenge over there. But the only thing is that I need to be able to get settled and then go into those first, and then later go be, the instructor that I would like to be over here. And that so far has been my intention. Thank
That's
you.
wonderful to hear. And I see in the chat here that Meghan has also given a shout out to that, Care Center members can check out Richard's articles and books in the library. So that's great to know.
My books are in the library. Let me just add this one. Just
Sure.
September 3rd September, I published one material, and then I want to donate it to the Care Center for IENs.
Mm-hmm.
So when I finally able to do it, then I'll just give it out to IENs, and then they will keep it in their library.
For sure. And I'm sure that there's so much learning, from this is one of the reasons why we like to do our cafe sessions this way, that we can
Yes.
hear from the experiences of those that have lived that journey and then can pass on that advice to others who are moving to Canada now and can probably avoid the same mistakes that some others have made. Osama, coming to you, I'll continue the conversation around networking, but also add, there also needs to be open mindedness when it comes to when you're making this move from one country to another. And as Meghan mentioned earlier, you've all been very modest in how you introduced yourselves, and there's immense work experience that one comes with. But then we're not always able to connect with exactly that level of um, match the level of experience with the first opportunity that one gets. So, any advice, learnings that you would like to share related to that, and how maybe networking or communication has played a role in where you are so far?
Yeah, actually, I'm going to briefly answer for the questions that you asked all the panelists. So,
Sure.
starting with what you need to have in order to have better chances here in Canada. So, as Meghan mentioned, one of the things that you can start preparing for, since the NNAS is going to be a long process, is learning the healthcare system here, learning the culture here. This will help you a lot when you are applying for a job and when you go into the interview. If they know that you already know the essence of the healthcare system, how the healthcare system works,
Yeah.
then that's a big advantage for you. I cannot emphasize more on certification. If you are qualified in quality and infection control and project management and all of that, get your certification done before coming here. So get certified in quality, get certified in infection control. This will boost your CV in many ways. Being bilingual also helped me a lot. I'm also bilingual coming from Lebanon. So the opportunities for finding work, whether in your domain or in other areas, is also going to be an advantage. Yeah, so, and I cannot also emphasize more on networking. Networking is key, whether you are searching for a job or even living every day of your life. So where to go shopping, where the area where you want to live, all of these come as a first encounter to you. So if you don't network with people, if you don't know people that already lives here, you're going to fall into so many gaps and so many mistakes. So really networking is key. I've been fortunate to have a mentor. I was working within the United States, and she knew contacts here in Canada. So she was able to connect me with people like Dr. Michelle Acorn, nurse practitioners, and all of that. And they really helped me a lot along the way preparing to come to Canada.
Yeah.
So it's not an easy challenge moving from one country to another. I know the culture here is a little bit different. The way that they provide healthcare is different. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is something that we also need to practice and need to know about. Maybe in our areas of practice, it was not tackled before, but this is something which is very important here. So brushing up your skills, no matter where you're coming from, no matter what your position was, is very important. So I was before coming here, I was the assistant director of nursing quality and advanced practice for more than 2 years. And coming here and knowing that I will be working maybe in a location or in a place which is not compatible, but learning the culture is very, very crucial also. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. All three of you have highlighted your personal experiences and things that one can do on their own. Meghan, I'd like to know from you, as part of PASS, what are some skills or what are some key areas related to, say, networking, mentoring, job support that you can highlight that are part of the program outside of the more academic or technical requirements? There's also a lot of support that is provided to any program participant. If you could highlight some of those expectations or things that are delivered as part of the program, please.
Yeah, sure. I'd like to start with a quote from my executive director, Ruth Lee, who always says Care Center tries to be the IENs network when they arrive, particularly post-arrival in Ontario. But we do, for nurses going to other provinces, try to make meaningful connections to the IEN support programs, the settlement agencies, professional associations where people can keep getting support. So I can talk about our pre and post-arrival supports. So pre-arrival in PASS, we actually facilitate a webinar once a month on networking, and my colleague Nicholas does one-on-one counseling to help people utilize LinkedIn as a networking tool. Definitely not my area of expertise. And we try to host different events. We're very fortunate to have access to our post-arrival program stars, meet the employer sessions that we've been doing more and more lately. So even prior to landing in Canada, people can connect with employers and see, what opportunities they could have before and after licensure, any incentives. There are some pretty hefty hiring incentives across the country, particularly in smaller communities. I think a lot of folks listening in are in Ontario or coming to Ontario. So there's a community nursing program with some very big hiring bonuses. I always encourage people to submit an expression of interest in. We have access individually, time permitting, and on a group basis to nurse mentors who will come and share insight into our programming. And I'm really lucky to have a wonderful set of colleagues. Not being a nurse myself, we tap into their expertise continually. My executive director, my nursing colleagues, our professional practice lead, they're all on hand to support IENs as well. And we try to keep aware of any opportunities that could be of interest. Can be tough trying to keep up with every development across the country, but we do our best.
That's great. Osama, I'd like to come back to you for a quick minute. We've, of course, so far we've discussed some of the qualities or some of the program details as part of PASS. We've learned about all of your previous experiences, how the journey is currently going, but also from your journey so far, what would be some things that you'd like to highlight as advice for others, right? Say from, like Vandana mentioned earlier, she's done some mock interview practice with Meghan and then appeared for some interviews. In your interactions with the work that you've done so far, what would be some advice for individuals in preparation for either certifications or preparation for when they're meeting people face to face and actually talking about what they can bring to the table and why they should be hired?
Yeah. Again, the focus would be on your qualifications. Again, don't be scared to show what you have, no matter what the conversation is. Now, a key element also is, and this is something that I didn't realize until I came here, is how you construct your CV, right? So this is you need to be open to this, and you need to tailor your CV according to the job description that you are applying for. If I show you my folder for my CVs, I have around 15 CVs there for different jobs and different job descriptions. So this is a key element, and we need to be open for that. In our past experiences, I don't know, coming from Lebanon or coming from Saudi Arabia, you have one CV that you apply with to any job that you want to apply for. Here, it's a little bit different, and and you need to take this into consideration because especially with somebody who has a number of years of experience, they cannot read your CV. It needs to be 2 pages, focused, and direct straight to the point. So this is something that I really advise people to really open up for. And I know that in past they will help you a lot, and they did help me a lot because I sent them my CV and they helped me configure it according to the positions that I will apply for. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Richard, what would you like to highlight from your journey? Any achievements or any particular obstacle that you were able to overcome?
So far as Osama highlighted, it's about the CV. I was also fortunate to have, a member from the care center, that's Nicholas, and then Meghan to also structure my CV for me. And then I also have about 3 or 4 resumes over here. They call it resume. So unlike back home in Ghana, whereby you have only one CV and then everything is on it, then you have to align the CV to the job description or the job that you're applying for. And then the obstacle so far is about the job employment or seeking for the job employment. Normally you apply and then they'll tell that you hear from them, and then it takes a long time for you to hear from them. But the only thing is that when you keep on knocking, definitely the door will be open. And that's basically so far my challenge, and I don't have any problem as at now.
Great advice as well.
Yeah,
Vandana, from your personal experience, let's come to the conversation around interviews. Are there some tricky questions you can highlight, or
Okay, for interview, it sounds the same. You should know about yourself. You prepare, you practice. The questions are quite the same, but you should be confident and should not be afraid to talk. And from some interviews that I did, I've just highlighted that when you share your personal experience, like when you give details of how you manage a situation, like a scenario-based question, and when you tell them how you manage that situation from your personal experience, it plays a great role because it is where you demonstrate what you have done and what skills you have to manage that situation. So during interview, they listen carefully. They look about how you did, like not the same answer that you listen to candidate, but sometimes the personal experience that you in reality have done it. So they look at it. And I just recently done an interview for a mental health position. So like they see how compassionate, how you view a mentally ill patient, how what are your feelings about it. So the question that they have took and how I answered, so they see what trust you can put in that position, what skills also. So like I said, sharing that personal experience is important during an interview.
Mhm.
And in any question, you give as much detail as you can.
Yeah. Was there a tricky one that you would like to share that you found yourself at a loss of words for, or that you could have prepared better for?
Since I did not do a lot, but I would say the question that they asked about well,
I
weaknesses,
always find
maybe.
the hardest, honestly,
The
for some
hardest,
reason.
I think, about weakness. Yeah, when we asked about weakness, and then also question about how do you view yourself in 5 years?
So
Yeah,
let's now
that
pose these
your
questions
question.
to Meghan. And Meghan, would you be kind enough to share some advice for, how one can answer these kind of questions because of course, as we've established so far, there's so much
And then let me
experience
also,
that everyone
sorry,
has.
I'm not cutting you short. I also want
Go
to
ahead.
share something about
Yeah, please.
interview. Normally, when you go in like that, or one thing that I've realized over here, they will ask you, how will you manage conflict?
Mm-hmm.
And as humans as we are, and then when we start interacting, definitely some of these, misunderstandings are bound to happen. And the question is that how will you manage such a situation? And that is a tricky thing that I've also encountered, and it's something that probably Meghan can share an insight for us.
I wish I had an easy answer to that question. That's one I have struggled with at every interview I've ever done. But yeah, really just and I can, help people craft answers to this when we do a mock interview, but really thinking about your long-term goals and where you want to be, and showing your desire to develop professionally to employers is really important, so they know that you're eager to further your career. So I know that can be very individual for people, and I know that can also be very hard to think about. But yeah, really think about, the types of skills you want to develop, how you want to go further in your career, any areas of expertise you're eager to gain more knowledge on. And one thing about healthcare employers is it's always nice to have, or good to have conversations with them about whether they're willing to fund some of these aspirations that you have, especially if it's, to become a nurse practitioner, for additional certifications. Sometimes people are willing to invest in you as an employer if they know you're willing to stay with them for longer.
For sure. At this point, I'll also like to remind the audience that we have a few more minutes left, and we are taking questions as well. So you're welcome to type your questions in the Q&A tab. We will quickly bring them up for our panelists to answer. But continuing the conversation around, the mock interviews or the questions that one is expected to answer in interviews, or the process in general. One particularly that I think is common across professions is, an elevator pitch that you need to come up with, or how to first introduce yourself. Meghan, any suggestions? And then, of course, anyone else from Vandana, Osama, and Richard, if you'd like to jump in to share your personal experience of culturally, technically, what are some things to say or avoid when it comes to within the healthcare profession? How can you show that you're compassionate without saying that? And how can you show that you have previous experience without talking about it for the next 3 minutes?
Yeah, definitely having an elevator pitch is important, a 30-second one, especially for, people you may encounter, or going to job fairs when you're going to be interacting with a large volume of employers. I usually do mine by just, saying what role I work in, my educational background, and what sectors I've worked in and what I'm interested in, and kind of where I'm striving to be in my career. So that's kind of how I do it. But yeah, try to keep it short and concise. That would be my advice. Robust and detailed, but short and concise.
Vandana, Richard, Osama, I welcome you to jump in and share anything that you'd like to add here.
Yeah, so this is a very important question, as this would be the icebreaker to any interview. So it's very important to have it well done, and to feel comfortable doing it. And as Meghan said, it needs to be short and concise, and at the same time encompass all of your qualifications and attitude and character. So yeah, I do practice this, and I would recommend that you record yourself when you're doing it. So get a short interview, get a summary of what you are going to say, record it on a video, and watch yourself and see how you're doing after that. And then just repeat if you feel that there's something wrong. You will not get it right from the first time, and it's a little bit different when you are actually in front of people, but then this will help you a lot in giving you confidence in doing it.
That's great to hear. Richard, Vandana, anyone?
Yeah. When you are going for an interview and then they ask you such a question, how to introduce yourself, normally you are faced with tension or anxiety, and definitely you don't feel comfortable with that. But for me, all that you need to do is to be straightforward, mention your name, your qualifications, your skill set that you have that you can bring to bear on that particular organization, and then be brief and succinct. And then everything that you say must be clear. But one thing that people have tend to forget is that as you are narrating all these things, you know, your employer or the person listening to you is also listening with the third ear. Someone asked me, what do I mean by the third ear? The third ear is about the substance of whatever thing that you are saying.
It might be a slight network issue, I believe. I think on Richard's side. So let's continue, and if we have him back, we'll have him continue. Yes. Richard, I think we're experiencing a little bit of network issue at your end. So I'll be moving on and asking Vandana a question. And then if I hear you back, I will come back to you.
So for interview question, it's good to be for telling about yourself. It's good to be straightforward for your qualification. Like Richard said and Osama said, you highlight where you have worked briefly by adding skills also that you have developed, and also what skills and you can bring to them, to the institution. Yeah.
Something else that I wanted to ask all of you, and then I'll be moving on to Meghan to answer more about that, is from your journey, your respective personal journeys of integration, of settlement in Canada, professional journey of working towards your licensure, is there something that you look back at and feel that I could have done this better, or I made a mistake that you would like to warn people against? So that they can either reduce the timeline where it comes to, like, from what I remember, Osama, you mentioned the NNAS application started as soon as possible. That would be a key tip for people to probably reduce the timeline and save some time and energy in that step. Vandana, is there something you'd like to add from your journey?
Yes, I would encourage other people so that they could attend workshop or do some courses, like having a certificate in nursing, like infection control or wound management, like anything related to nursing that could be an asset for them. They can put on their resume. Well, for me personally, if I could have attended more in my country, it would have been more advantageous for me. So as a part of an advice, good to have certification in areas that you have experience in. We nurses, we have IEN, we have skills of, like I can say, IV therapy, putting a cannula, I could say, but here, like, you need a certification for this. But we have learned it during our training. So
Yes.
in Canada, to perform a specific skills or procedure, you have to have a certificate or have attended a training. But we in our country, in our training itself, we have learned all these things. So we don't have a
particular certification
specific
for that
for
skill
that.
set.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if participants or candidates wishing to come to Canada could have gain certificates in some areas, it would be very advantageous for them.
Certainly. Osama, something that you'd like to add very briefly?
Yes. Again, no, you would not know the result of your assessment until after a while, and even after that, you might not work until you have your license. So a very important step that you can do while searching for a job: don't wait until you come to Canada, and don't rely only on Glassdoor or Indeed or all of these recruitment areas or for job postings. Decide on the area where you want to work. Let's say you're going to come to Ottawa, you're in Toronto. Just look at healthcare centers in that area, because some of them do not advertise outside, and there will be a lot of missed opportunities. So look at all these healthcare centers in that area and go to their websites, understand their mission and vision, and see if they have career opportunities there. So don't rely only on these recruitment sites, also go into the healthcare systems.
For sure. Something that we've highlighted in other sessions of Café New Canadians, also in many articles on our website, is the need to look up your profession and the growth opportunities in a specific region and not just focus on the larger cities. Oftentimes, people first decide to move to a city, decide, lock in their destination, and then start looking for opportunities. But it's very important to check that before you arrive here, before you decide a city, because maybe there are opportunities in a whole different city for you and growth opportunities that you might waste time with in relocating much later. Richard, I will be coming to you very briefly, but before that, Meghan, is there something that we left out from PASS? And specifically, learning outcomes is what I wanted you to highlight for someone who joins PASS as a program, wherever they might be in their journey of reconnecting with their profession. What are some learning outcomes, or what would be the step where they've reached after taking up PASS?
Yeah, so we hope that by participating in PASS, and this is really how all the services were designed, that people feel better prepared to enter into the workforce. So we don't do anything, around assessments or with the regulators. We're not affiliated that way, but we just want to help encourage people, guide them through the assessment, and hopefully, make sure people feel equipped entering into a new healthcare system. And I know I've talked a great deal about our pre-arrival supports. I should mention a bit more about our expansive post-arrival program called STARS for nurses in Ontario who could be listening in. And it actually has an even wider array of offerings than PASS does. So I hope, I do encourage people listening into Ontario who are IENs to hook up with our post-arrival program. We do a lot of the similar supports in PASS, but we have some more extensive supports to help people prepare for the licensure exam. We have an incredible CELBAN instructor, clinical assessment preparation if people have to do clinical simulations for the regulator. We do observational job shadowing with our employer partners, so people can go on different shifts in their clinical settings of interest. Been phenomenal for networking, and I really should have brought that up when we were asked about networking and the importance of that. And we have formal connections with employer partners, including through the Meet the Employer sessions. So yeah, I'd
There's
say
both pre and post arrival support that is available for.
So the observational job shadowing is purely post arrival, as are some of the other exam preparation workshops and things like that, our NCAP preparation. But yeah, I'm going to echo all the incredible advice that was given. And I know Osama mentioned start early. If there's one takeaway from PASS, start the assessment early. It can be very time consuming, especially people going through regular NNAS pathways. Focus on the province you're going to, become familiar with the nursing standards, the labor market trends. That's a really important pre-arrival tip. And I'm going to bring up again what one of our panelists said about looking at rural and smaller communities, because it can be quite competitive these days, even for nurses, where there's still huge labor market demands. It is still harder in the cities. And there are a lot of benefits to living in smaller communities, from the cost of living, the scope of practice you can work in. So I really encourage people, while they're looking into different clinical settings and getting familiar with workforce integration, to really think about maybe applying some of your skills in smaller communities. And I mentioned earlier, there are some extremely big hiring incentives in many of these communities, and I've seen them anywhere from $10,000 to $50,000 for 1 to 3
sorry, Meghan,
years.
but yeah, I think that would be a great point to come to close this session as well. Now we're exactly on time, but not without giving the other panelists a quick 15 to 30 seconds of time for any last piece of advice that you have. Starting with Richard, very quickly. We've built on so much so far. Any last piece of advice that you have?
My piece of advice for all out there who would like to come to Canada to do nursing or to be employed in nursing is that don't have it at the back of your mind that whatever qualifications that you've acquired in your back home is the same thing over here. Please, when you can, be humble, subject yourself to all the requirements over here, and definitely you get hired to your dream profession. Thank you.
Well said. Thank you so much. Vandana, if you could quickly share one tip as well, please.
I would say to start earlier and can be time consuming, and I would say good luck because it's
Stay
hard, but
positive.
don't give up.
And that is essential. That is one of the most
Yeah.
essential things, actually.
And
Yeah.
also learn where you want to have your licensure. Read about the requirement that they ask, and so that you can have
Yep.
you can figure out how much time it can take to meet that requirement. Like for me, for CNO, I met all the requirement, but I just had to have for authorization I just had to have my PR. That was what was taking so much time. So even my criminal check had passed over 6 months. I had to do it again.
Yes,
So it's good to have to know what requirements and the time frame for all this and
for
start
sure.
earlier.
Definitely. Thank you. And Osama, very quickly, in like 10 seconds, if you could condense
Yeah.
what you had to say.
I just want to say, keep positive. It's a very nice working environment. Don't tire yourself. You will get there.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much. I'm sorry for rushing you at the end, but we've been able to cover so much so far. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you to the attendees for joining us for this session wherein we spoke about how internationally educated nurses can thrive in Canada. We hope you found this session valuable. As I mentioned earlier, this session is brought to you in collaboration with PASS, and you can definitely connect with Meghan. She shared her information and learn more about PASS at passfornurses.org. We at New Canadians bring for you sessions of Café New Canadians, as well as lots of other information that we have across our platforms, which is our website. We have a YouTube channel. You can sign up for our newsletter. You can watch us on TV for those who are in Canada. So there are various ways of connecting with us, accessing the information that we have, and learning about more such programs and sessions that you can take part in. Thank you to everyone. I hope you found this session useful. We'll see you again
Thank you
in
very
another
much.
session.